All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Yahara Live. You may have noticed we're not calling it a webinar anymore. We've changed the name to Yahara Live to clarify this isn't just us giving a presentation. We want this to feel more like a live discussion with people who are doing interesting work in the industry. And with that being said, we're excited to have you all join us for this discussion today about how we support companies that are doing the important work in the biohealth industry. Our speakers today are Garrett Peterson, the Chief Strategy Officer at Yahara Software, James Smagala, Yahara's Bioinformatics Practice Manager, and our special guest, Chris Lobert, the Director of Scientific Transport at Armstrong Scientific Transport. With those introductions out of the way, I'll pass it off to Garrett to get us started.
Thanks a lot, Austin, and welcome everybody to today's edition of Yahara Live. As Austin said, we're really excited about today's conversation. In the past, I know a lot of these conversations have been very technical. We've talked about the ins and outs of bioinformatics pipelines. We've talked about how to implement AI and ML within laboratories, or how to build scientific instrumentation platforms. All these really interesting topics. And today, I think we're going to take it a little bit different direction, a very interesting topic as well, but talk about providing services to the to the laboratory community from the perspective of the service providers. And so to do that, I want to introduce you to Chris Lobert, somebody that James and Adam and I met at a lab manager conference. I think it was about a year ago now, Chris, that we got to know each other, and found out about a really interesting business that you're in. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and Armstrong.
Yeah, absolutely. First about myself, I've been at Armstrong for 18 plus years, working on, I guess, many different divisions that we have. We've got a household good moving division, fine art division, and now our scientific division as well. Throughout my time, I've held various roles across those divisions, ultimately leading to me being involved in relocating thousands and thousands of folks worldwide. I've always positioned myself to really to help people, to kind of be a resource through those relocations. I think it's said that relocations are the second most stressful sort of event that folks entail. We won't get into the first one. That's not a great one, but regardless, I like to be there, both me and my team, when there's challenges, regardless of size or shape, that we provide solutions and we make things really as seamless as possible. We really look to just be a trusted partner in any way we can, and we found success in doing that. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a large or small challenge, that we're there to ultimately find solutions, hopefully in advance, but certainly also in the moment if needed as well.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of those kind of interesting scenarios as you get into here as the day goes on. But before we do that, I want to kind of reintroduce you to James Shimagala. Again, most of you have met James through other webinars, but James, you're really also, I think, in context of this conversation, it's important to emphasize that you're a lab rat from way back, and so maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your laboratory experience, given that you've already exposed this audience to a lot of your technical background.
Because I live at a technical company these days, we mostly talk tech, but there is a fair amount of lab background there. Did my PhD at the University of Colorado, designing diagnostic assays for influenza. So this is all molecular techniques, PCR, sequencing, microarrays, sort of anything in that domain, and then a fair amount of antigenic stuff as well. So in the lab, supporting robotics, designing assays, building up sort of capabilities, and then as my career went along, really sort of moving over to the information management side of things and organizing and moving data around and keeping laboratories running. So I've sort of touched a lot of parts of laboratory operations. And I think maybe that's sort of the point of where we're going today, is to talk through a little bit of what's it look like from some of the different perspectives that you don't think about every day when you are directly in the laboratory.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today is really, what are some of the aspects of this that maybe aren't as obvious. Chris said earlier that moving is, probably for all organizations, but for laboratories, one of the more stressful things that they do. I don't know exactly where it's on the list, but deploying new software systems into laboratories is pretty stressful as well, I would say. Um, and so why don't we get started into this conversation? James, you've been involved in deploying a number of systems within organizations. And throughout your career here, you've seen a lot of laboratories. What do you think there's one thing that people don't realize about laboratories that you've observed over the years?
Thing people don't realize about laboratories. You would start with a tricky one. Um, I'm going to say it's how much of day-to-day operations live in people's working memory and not on paper or on a computer system where they can be nicely tracked. We've got this assumption that most everything is computerized and automated these days, and what I will tell you, I found in a lot of frontline laboratory operation is people calling out accession numbers across the room, and it's all jargon and gobbledygook that is specific to your organization, and it doesn't translate well to the next laboratory over.
Mhm.
That working memory makes it really hard to come in and figure out what you're supposed to do about changing an environment like that. You end up with a very strong culture component and a lot of things that sort of carry through. And then when you first see it, you think, there's no way these people actually remember all of these 10 and 12 digit numbers. And then you hang out for a couple of years and you start doing it too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as you look at laboratories, I mean, they seem to be, driven by SOPs and they are and are very process oriented organizations. But yet, it's amazing to the degree that sort of culture of organizational hive mind really drives the operations. Chris, Chris, how about you? You've helped a number of scientific operations, not just laboratories, but other types of scientific operations move. What do you observe that, maybe is a little bit surprising about these organizations?
From my side, a couple points. One, it's organized chaos. If you're an onlooker, kind of from the outside looking in, laboratories are really positioned as very ultra precise. And to some degree, they are, but a lot of folks in the lab spaces are juggling tight schedules, have limited equipment availability. They have experimental hiccups that they have to troubleshoot, and they spend quite a bit of time, or most of their time, troubleshooting some of their experiments. So, to James's point, a lot of the stuff has to live up here, and that kind of what leads to that organized chaos. Again,
Mhm.
there's a lot of components to ensure that everything runs smoothly from a governance standpoint, so to speak. But there's certainly that component, and then kind of also touching on James's point, you've got sort of different levels of digitization in these labs. Some are full scale where that the good old pen and paper are nowhere to be found. Everything is electronic, whether that's through a laptop or some of these digital handwriting tools that are available these days. And so you've kind of got various mediums across several different, even internal labs.
Mhm.
James, you also touched on culture. I guess a bit of that is culture as well. But yeah, those are the two that come to mind from my side.
Okay. Well, and Chris, I think we'll just stay with you here then, because you had mentioned earlier too that obviously change is hard. Relocation, deploying systems, any sort of change to any organization, to be fair, is hard. But a really key part of being able to manage change is to prepare well. And so, what are some of the things that you do in preparing laboratories to make moves of their equipment or of their operations? And maybe what are some of the pitfalls that you can maybe help them see coming and avoid that are common to that situation?
So a bit of a loaded question, but some of the things that ultimately we focus on, the devil's in the details, so to speak. And I can't sort of put out there enough that the planning stages, I guess like any or most projects, is really the most crucial. Sort of do the work on the front end. Rather than the back end. But I kind of try to put the message out there as much as possible. I've got some folks now reaching out for 2027, 2028 relocations that they at least have on the radar. They don't know all the details yet, but they're starting to develop a bit of some relationship partnerships with folks that they think that will be able to assist them. Once you get into more of a granular level, yeah, certainly you get into selecting or determining if you're going to work with OEMs on the instrumentation side. Obviously, as we progress here as a society, digitization and more intricate instrumentation becomes available, which is great, but it also makes things a little more challenging from the relocation perspective. So you don't just pick up a lab and move it. You definitely need to look at each piece of equipment, or depending on the type of relocation you have, maybe you have chemicals. Again, you can't just throw those into boxes, throw them in the back of your car, and drive to the next location. There's definitely governance and compliance that's required, and these sorts of things take time. A lot of that work focuses again on putting together inventory lists, and I think that's one of the largest pitfalls that we come across. Whether regardless if it's equipment or chemicals, there's a pretty large labor component to put together these inventories. Certainly on the chemical side, some folks have 20 chemicals they work with, and then others that we've relocated have literally thousands and thousands of chemicals. So in some of my experience, some of those teaching assistants or folks that making their way through the ranks, so to speak, they're tasked with literally going through each and every single chemical or every single piece of inventory, and this time just adds up very quickly. So to call us up and look to move a large scale lab within a week, I'll never say never, but it would be very challenging. Yeah, for sure.
And James, I mean, just a little bit of a topic offside, but I do know you told a story maybe you want to recount of moving some in this case biological materials around, but I mean you do have to plan ahead, and there's a downside of doing so. Maybe you want to tell your story.
Um, Now I'm curious which story you're thinking about.
Oh, I was thinking of when they were moving the influenza samples from laboratory to laboratory and shipping them through UPS,
Oh.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, moving infectious diseases is its own special kind of painful. And you would be surprised at how many of them travel commercial freight. Just in a cooler box with a little bit of dry ice in there, hoping that they get there in time. You'd be surprised to see that. The
Or with you on the in the
Oh, that one. Are we allowed to talk about that?
oh.
Uh, the story Garrett's referring to is one from my graduate school days. I had a collaboration going with the influenza division down at CDC, and the sort of surprising thing that happens, we go down, we tour, we spend a bunch of time working with the scientists down there, and we're coming to fly back, and they've packed up a box of samples for us. And so we just walk onto the plane with it. And this actually is approved method of transportation. There really was very little danger out of all of this. But the surprising bit of the story really hinges on the stewardess trying to be helpful and offering to put that in the freezer. And we said, no, we'll think we'll hang on to this. And one of the other grad students, we've been down to Georgia, and he has bought barbecue to bring back with him. He needs a taste of home. He says, well, you can put my barbecue in the refrigerator. So the barbecue got the specialty treatment, and the viruses went in the overhead bin. Is this the approved method of transportation? Again, sort of you'd be surprised. Yes, it was really fine for what we were doing that day, but it's because it's a very stable sort of setup, and the only critical component of what we were doing there was, will we get home in time before the dry ice runs
Hmm.
out? We
Yeah.
Yeah,
did.
and
The
it's
samples were
timings like
fine.
that. It's timings like that I know that Chris you deal with all the time
Yes.
in moving, especially samples of biological samples. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit later here as well. James, I mean, from a bioinformatics standpoint, obviously, preparation is also important. I mean, I know, in most cases, what your teams are doing is they're taking technology that, has been developed within the R&D or maybe even the, just pure research coming out of a university, and developing it into commercialized, platforms, pipelines, that kind of thing. But preparation is very important. Even if you're going to use this, which we do an agile methodology, preparation is still very important for doing that as well, right?
Absolutely. Scientific software is a difficult sort of specialty because it all does come out of a university or that one senior researcher that happens to have some software on their hard drive, or it is very rarely presented to you in a nicely packaged format where it can be immediately used.
Hmm.
And that's one of the challenges we definitely see. And sort of to Chris's point about going in and considering each piece of equipment separately and trying to understand what are the problems with this particular piece, not the whole move, just
Hmm.
this piece.
Hmm. Hmm.
It shows up in the software domain too. If you're going to do a bioinformatics pipeline and you want to run that at scale and turn it into a production hardened, ready to run, reproducible sort of piece of software, it's not one thing. It's often advertised as a monolith, and here's all the parts that you need. And inevitably, what every bioinformatician does is spend a month cursing the previous guy that worked on the pipeline and fighting to get it working in your environment. That's an almost universal experience with every piece of scientific software I have ever touched. And one of the things that I think we take a fair amount of pride in doing right at Yahara is taking sort of the flimsy cardboard box full of some stuff and turning it into a proper, repeatable, deployable, updatable, maintainable solution.
Hmm.
That's a there is an art to that.
I
Well,
could
and part of that art has to do with managing the people, personalities, and cultures involved. And Chris, I think that this is something, certainly you must find is that when you're building your teams to move scientific operations, labs, generally speaking, more than most organizations are really resistant to change or really nervous about change for some very, very good reasons. Change is disruptive to the quality of a lot of laboratories operations. Change can be disruptive to the equipment itself. In your case, I mean, there's just a lot of reasons to be nervous. And so, as you're pulling your teams together, what are you looking for besides, obviously the logistics expertise? What are you looking for in the makeup of your team that really helps, bridge that gap between, not just getting the work done, but also making sure that the laboratory management and operations are comfortable as they can be, at least with the process.
Yeah, it's a great question, Garrett. And for my team, it's all about being calm, cool under pressure, and I think it's probably the most important characteristic. Again, you've got a lot of folks that, because of that change, are extremely worried. Their stress levels at a 15 out of 10, and they're picking up the phone or sending those emails with that 15 level, and my team does a great job of bringing folks down and, bringing it down into more bite-sized, acceptable pieces that we can really hone in on. Very much like the equipment, looking at each individual piece of equipment, kind of breaking down what's really causing that angst or that anxiety to reach extended levels. And sometimes it gets me in trouble. I'm a super calm guy, very, seemingly laid back, but I do get stressed out. Maybe it's more so in the background, but I think in those moments when you need that helping hand, as I've spoke about off the top, that people are looking for guidance and sort of guidance under pressure and able to execute. And that kind of shifts into my second point, which I mentioned a bit earlier that we can do all the planning in the world. Things happen, things change, and when those happen, having the ability to kind of come up with creative solutions on the fly, which ultimately may not be that best world pre-planned sort of solution. However, it's a solution that is basically communicated to all parties involved, agreed upon. There's a level of comfort. So they kind of go hand in hand, having that calmness in those high pressure situations and the ability to actually come up with solutions. A very quick story would be we had a client relocating -80 freezers, and one in particular, for whatever reason, as soon as we unplugged it, we went to plug it back in and it wasn't working. There was no
Hmm.
power.
Hmm.
We've got
Oh
samples and
no.
research inside. In this particular instance, the customer had been working on this research for 10 plus years, and immediately they're like, "What do you mean there's no power?" My lead technician on that particular relocation actually pulled up the schematics of the actual make and model of that freezer, took off the back cover, and ultimately sorted out that one of the cables had come loose.
Oh
So
wow.
simply plugged it back in, put the cover back on, plugged it in, and we were all set. But let me tell you, those 20 minutes or so, the customer was pacing, what was going on. And the neat thing about -80s in particular, they're very well insulated. So at the end of the day, 20 minutes, the freezer maybe lost 1 degree of temperature. Again, to some that means a lot. But in this particular case, I mean, a great example of how the technician was able to sort out, come up with a solution, and obviously, as soon as that client saw power running back into that freezer, they immediately just came back down to earth from that anxiety level.
That's
Yep, that's really, oh, sorry, James, go ahead.
well, the follow-up question. So those are the unknown unknowns. Stuff happens day of, you can't have planned for it, and you worked through it and you solved it.
Yeah.
I guess I was going to follow up with sort of the known unknowns, the things that aren't obvious to me, the laboratorian, that you are trying to be proactive about and get in front of. Like what lives in that domain in the transportation space?
Well, if we want to maybe stick with that -80 story I just told, a lot of folks don't look forward to destination. Everything's all set where they are, but some of these freezers are purchased due to the environment that they're in.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a freezer from the UK that they're bringing over to the US, and obviously there's different plug and power requirements. So it has happened, albeit not a lot, but we've had certainly been involved with some electricians being called ASAP at who knows what kind of rates to basically update a breaker or change a plug out to ensure that that appropriate power is available for those incoming
Hmm.
units. So that's a huge component. And if you want to extrapolate that out, it's also that planning phase for the destination as well, kind of where everything's going. So we always ask those questions. Another great example would be folks downsizing. So who knows, a 2,000 square foot lab, they're cutting it in half to 1,000 because maybe it's a better space or location. And where does all the stuff go? You had perfect spots at the original location, but the destination, it's
I bet.
tighter. You have to come up with some creative solutions, and certainly you get into running CO2 and the power to these units, and these are things that folks they don't put that into consideration at all, and that's why we recommend reaching out to us so that we can assist sort of with those project management and ultimately connecting with the right general contractors if needed, and really try to work towards providing a full scale solution for folks.
I think some of the things that you just said, translate over into the software side too, Chris, in terms of, you know, when you're going to be, in a stressful situation, it's really best to be there with people that, first of all, are number one, well prepared. So yes, as James said, there's going to be in the, in many scenarios, there's going to be unknown unknowns. Things are going to occur that, despite our best efforts, we're not going to have known they were going to happen, either because they popped up unexpectedly or they just, were unknowable and at the time. And so, but the more prepared the team is, and the more confident the team is in that preparation, and then combining that with their ability to be, calm under pressure and try to make the best decisions that are possible, really do, give you the best chance of success in those scenarios. So, James, I mean, I think you see that with scientific software development teams too. I mean, obviously, the work we do is incredibly complex. We need to have highly skilled software engineers and deployment specialists and architects and project managers and requirements analysts. But there's something else that I think you look for when you're building those teams too. How would you describe, what makes a software development team really merge well with the scientific operation to get things done?
So much of it is willingness to just go and ask the right questions of the people that already know what they are trying to get. It is not good enough to go off and write a piece of software in a vacuum. I've got some idea and I slap an interface on it and there's a database and we're done. And I take it back and I show it to the client and it's gone terribly and it does nothing they need. That's back to sort of that first point of the insular culture that can develop and how much is very specific to that one laboratory, not any given laboratory.
Hmm.
Um, the place that you see this, what's my best story here? I'm going to tell the one of developing a data analysis package. So we're doing a relatively straightforward logistic curve fit. We're going to get an IC50 for some drug activity off of the middle of it. And we put the software together and it's fitting the curves beautifully, and the answer is wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I cannot convince the scientists that I am working with to even look at it because it's different than their number. I had to really slow down and spend a bunch of time talking through with that team what it was that they were actually expecting to see. And it turns out that this was a data truncation error in Excel. Their copy and paste and data manipulation process had betrayed them, and that's not obvious. And the new answer is different than the old answer, and this cannot be true. Those kinds of things really do they cause the kind of 15 out of 10 panic that Chris is talking about. People get really anxious when you start having that kind of conversation with them. You extrapolate that to the larger team putting in place a full application for the scientific software, and the requirements gathering and the discussions and the learning to work together across company cultures and really be careful and deliberate and hear why people are saying something is what tends to end you up in a place where you've got a real shot at a
Mhm.
successful implementation, really meeting somebody's needs. But it's a lot of upfront legwork to make that happen. It's a lot of people and time and willingness to talk
And listen.
and listen carefully.
Point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, James, I mean, I know, it's time we're about halfway through here. It's time to kind of dish the tea or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how the kids say it nowadays, but I mean, a lot of what we're doing, obviously, and your role in particular, is, early on consultative engagements with potential clients about things that they want to do, or existing clients with new initiatives that they want to do. With AI and predictive analytics and some of the tools we have here, there's really relatively few things that can technically can't be done anymore. There's a lot of things that we can accomplish, but yet projects still fail. As we know, that historically for IT projects, for projects in general, when projects fail, it's a lot of times technology isn't really the driver for it. You say all the time, scientific software, the blocker usually isn't technical, it's usually organizational. But whether it's organizational or technical, sometimes you run into scenarios in which projects just are not feasible or viable. How do you deal with, how do you see the red flags of a project that really shouldn't go forward, and then how do you sort of navigate that scenario?
I think the biggest red flag, the roadblock that typically ends up sabotaging things is wildly under-constrained problems. I want it to do a thing, go. Or wildly over-constrained problems. I have specified 17 different ways exactly how this is going to be done, and by the end of it, you cannot create a piece of software or a move to the next location because the only way that this all works is exactly the way it works right now, and there is no room to move. Those sort of two conditions are the things that sabotage most projects, in my experience. Um, the over-constrained example I know Garrett's poking at a little bit here is one where we had an antigenic assay, so a big matrixed, many plates, lots of time in the laboratory assay. And the data that's coming off of it, it's very, people are literally picking up a plate and reading it. It's difficult to automate, and the data is difficult to move around. And because of the way that it was viewed in that organization, the only way it could ever be done was manually with spreadsheets. And every attempt to automate any of the data movement, any of the reporting considerations around it ran into an ideological problem, which is we've always done it this way, and you cannot change it. It became a bit of a millstone, right? That's your boat anchor just dragging you down all the time. You cannot change that process. Is that a software problem? No, it's an organizational change problem. And now we're into sort of management theory and how do you really do good change management in big complex processes that has nothing to do with can I write a piece of software that would help you with that problem? Those are the places that really get sticky. And to your point about AI and all of this, it's opened up new opportunities for me to automate things that I couldn't have automated before. There are new discussions to be had. There are new technologies that are available here, new interfaces that are slowly going to start to change the way you work. And if, as an organization, you are stuck because you require yourself to be, I can't change that.
Mhm,
Not
mhm,
usually from the outside looking in as a consultant.
mhm, mhm.
That's a much harder transformation.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm sure you run into this as well. I mean, in preparing for this, as we started talking about this part of the topic, you mentioned multiple times that some clients just want to try to put squares into circles, I think is the term that you used. So what are some of the warning signs from your perspective that, the schedule, budget, scope, or other aspects of something are just not going to be feasible? And again, how do you handle that conversation, if that's the case?
I love that one, the good old spread from the circles. Yeah, we certainly do face that, regardless if that's adequate time or budget. But we typically have folks that are sort of accepting of the change, but with a bit of attitude, meaning, okay, fine, we've been told we're relocating, but we need to relocate like now. I need to get back up and running. I don't care there's 90 pieces of equipment that are utilized in the lab space. It would be great if you could get those just all decommissioned, decontaminated, shut down to the new location next week. Amazing. This doesn't sound that bad of a relocation process to me. Sounds great, right? Well, unfortunately, again, as I've outlined earlier in today's chat, it does take time to break things down. And a lot of what we do is coaching folks through that change. And really, again, you have to say, listen, well, if you want to move in a week, well, here's the 90 things that need to take place. And in order to do that, by the way, we would need 50 individuals on site 24 hours a day. And then you get into talking budget numbers and whoa, wait a minute, that's not quite possible. So we certainly are experienced in dealing with some internal squabbles. Again, the folks that are making the decisions aren't always connected to the folks on the front lines, so to speak, performing their research in whatever facet that might be. So it's always about trying to find that fine line between the decision makers and the folks that are actually operating into that. And sometimes we do put squares into circles. Sometimes you think something might not quite be possible, but you're able to creatively come up with a solution for that particular individual. And that's a great feeling when you do it, but it happens so rarely that you kind of hang on to the ones that you are able to do. So, all that being said, for us, yeah, when we get those folks that agree to the change, but sort of are pushing back at every sort of point, we really like to go in and find some folks that kind of advocate for the process appropriately, and providing the tools, even for the folks that may find it challenging and a little bit difficult. Well, let's ask them why.
Mhm.
Why is this such a challenge? Let's understand what it truly is and see if we can come up with a solution specifically for that individual and maybe change that sort of thought process or culture, even on an individual level, to something more accepting across the board, and really get the entire team on board with that relocation process. And I think the biggest part for us really is just listening. I didn't really touch on it. My background is not scientific, but being in the lab spaces now 10 plus years, I've certainly gained a pretty good understanding of what people do, what they're using equipment wise, and where they're going, and all those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to understand where people are coming from. And if you don't do that, then I'm not sure really how anybody could do their job, but certainly there's folks out there that kind of take that anvil and say, this is how it's going to happen. This is how it has to happen. And if you don't like that, well, then that's your decision. But we definitely don't like to kind of go in with that perspective. And I think that's one reason why, we do get a fair amount of positive feedback, because you're basically positioning ourselves to relocate with them, not for them.
Mhm. No,
How
I
many
love that. I love that term.
how many miracles per move is your average client allowed?
They're requesting about five per move. Try to deliver one or two, but
There you go. There you go.
Well, and I think that that is an important part of, the services industry, especially, is having that conversation, taking ROI into account, taking risk mitigation and planning into account, risk reward into account. And asking the question, yes, I'm sure in your case and in our case, as I said earlier, there's not many things where I could say we can't do it, but I think the real question that needs to be asked and answered is, should we do that? Should we do it this way, or are there some alternatives that should be explored? And being able to ask that, like you said, Chris, comes to a certain degree. The ability to do that comes with having some background in the arena as well. So speaking of that, and speaking of background, I love working with scientific companies and the customers that we work with and the clients that we work with, just because, every day we're talking with people that have just this incredible depth of knowledge into, various different, things that I'll never really fully understand. But I think now I'm going to give you guys both a chance to kind of talk on the other side of that. And from your perspective, what is something that within your business, Chris, that you understand very well and wish that perhaps maybe the members of the scientific community understood a little bit better about moving scientific operations?
Oh, again, you're bringing the loaded questions. Um, from our perspective, one thing that we continually touch on is what we do is not, quote unquote, the regular mover or that sort of mantra around that. Our teams are very specialized. They do things on a daily basis. And they very much know what they're doing related to specific equipment. And if there is no knowledge, again, those are discussions that happen ahead of time. But the point I would allude to is we do hit on a bit of that resistance to change, and that funnels its way into coming in potentially and telling our teams how to do their jobs while the relocation is happening. And our teams always approach it. We're always open to feedback. Everyone learns every day, and but sometimes it's just not done in the appropriate manner, or you've got folks who have done two moves before, and they kind of have everything all set, and they know exactly. To James's previous point, it had to be in a certain way this time, or it can't be at all. In those situations, again, you walk through them, but at the end of the day, we always say that we don't come into laboratories and tell folks how to run their experimentation processes or come up with their policies and procedures. But on our side, we're certainly open to feedback, and really, we create an environment that it's a bit of a hybrid. I think it's important that both teams on the side of the relocation have the opportunity for input so that everyone's, truly comfortable. And I think if you do it any other way, then you're kind of setting yourself up for a failure in some shape or form, regardless if that's like true in that shape or form, or the move gets done, everything's great, you walk away, but the client's not happy, or the crew's not happy. And I think that's another important, just given a form here that the crews are human too, and the teams they sometimes they take things personally, and by that I mean not feedback, but if somebody's relocating the research that they've been working on for 30 years, and we have that on board, our teams like really they're worried, they lose sleep at night knowing that they have that level of responsibility throughout that relocation. And I think again that's another reason, suggesting what I just said, where we're relocating with them and not for them. And I think that really gives us success as we go along.
I really like that. I really like the idea, or the sort of getting out there that you know the importance of the work and sort of maintaining the pristine nature of the work that's being done with our clients really does become owned by our teams. I've seen that with our technical teams as well, that they, not by any means that we understand it, as deeply as they do, or even closely, but I think there's a lot of pride that is sort of taken on by the team about that research and about their role in making sure that it continues and gets to its ultimate conclusion. So, yeah, I appreciate and recognize that, and I like the way you put that very, very politically correctly. James, I'm going to count on you to dish a little bit more dirt here, because otherwise this just will never get any ratings. What would you like people to know about building software systems that maybe isn't as well recognized by the scientific community?
Oh, I am not going to give the hot take answer. Not this time. Chris went with some of the people aspects of it. I'm going to touch on the risk factors, the things that are a little bit hidden and you don't necessarily think about architecting them in at the beginning of the process. And this is compliance and sign-offs and signatures and data consistency. It's fiddly, low-level detail stuff that really has very little to do with the features you want to see in an application or the data that you want to work on. But if you don't take time to nail down some of those details early in the process, you cause a real fire drill later. Oh crap, I have to figure out how to take this non-compliant system and make it compliant. You've set yourself a near impossible task if you do that. The upside down version of that, where we actually build the foundation first and say, oh, hey, this is going to be in a regulated environment. These are the standards we have to conform to. Let's architect that stuff in day one. It adds a little overhead, but there's no panic. It comes through easily into the application because it was always there from the beginning. The foundation is laid the right way, and by the time you get to the end, yes, it took an extra 10% overhead on your whole project to get that thing in, but there's no panic now.
Mhm, mhm.
You're fine, your risks are mitigated, the project goes forward much more smoothly. That fiddly detail stuff has the ability to sabotage you. That's not a sexy take. It's
Yeah,
just hard
yeah.
work.
Well, it's very true though. I appreciate that. I appreciate that perspective that the very visible work of writing and testing software and deploying the software and whatnot is so importantly supported by all those other tasks of maintaining the validation processes and maintaining the documentation processes and the training and all the other things that make projects successful. And yeah, I think there's a bit of a tip of the iceberg viewpoint that a lot of non-IT teams or software development teams perhaps suffer from in their viewpoints. So that's a great take. Thank you. Well, we are kind of getting towards the end here. I just want to give you guys both one last chance. I mean, one of the things I think is kind of interesting about both of your careers is that you've spent well over a decade in either case. Observing and working within the laboratory environments. And Chris, I'll start with you. What have you seen change over these last 10 or more years that you think is kind of interesting in terms of the laboratory and scientific environments that you've worked with?
I would say there's real three things that have really stuck out for us. It's the instrumentation is becoming more intricate. With that is good things. They're able to do more. Kind of attribute that to vehicles and. Certainly, they've come a long way. More technology is involved, but what that means is there's more to consider, more things to go down or wrong with experimentation. So that's certainly one thing that's progressed. I mean, technology, of course, we've got AI progressing by the second now. So for us, that's more intricate equipment, so more time required to ensure that everything gets relocated appropriately. Data integrity is a massive one, which obviously touches on your side. And a lot of the equipment now, certainly there's a laptop, there's a PC that's running the software, that's powering the unit, and certainly extrapolating all the data from the experimentation. And obviously, that's just going to continue to grow as far as those requirements. And the last one would be sustainability. A lot
Mhm.
more folks are interested in packing materials, what you're using, is it recyclable? If they come to us and suggest that they need to dispose of a biosafety cabinet, is that going directly to the landfill? What's happening with that type of equipment? And that's one thing that I've always taken a bit personal, and I don't really have any interest in taking anything to the landfill. So certainly, if there's the ability to hand that off to maybe an existing lab, we're in a lot of shared lab spaces. Obviously, if the equipment is still working, if it's not, then we would typically interface with scrap metal, scrap yards, see if there's some use there to break it down and kind of get reuse from those
Mhm.
precious metals. So at that point, again, I very rarely, and I don't want to even say on a day, I want to say on a yearly basis, have any of our teams travel to a landfill with anything to drop
Mhm.
off. off. So certainly the boxes we suggest you could reuse those, but we also have the ability to have folks use plastic totes so that there's no waste. We can simply provide those, use them, and then use them on the next relocation. So we've got many avenues to do our best from that sustainability perspective.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I've been in laboratories for most of my career as well, and I can say that, when I started, ESG wasn't a term that anybody talked about or even thought about. And now it's fairly common. I mean, and most laboratory operations have really started to recognize the amount of waste that, is sort of inherent in the processes and how to minimize that. And I think have really come a long way. It's cool that you point that out. James, what have you seen over your years of working in laboratories that's changed and is different now than maybe was true before?
Chris could have stolen my answer for just about everything except has anyone ever asked us to get rid of a biosafety cabinet? That's not a frequent question in the software space. Um, I think to sort of extend the some of the themes that Chris was hitting on there a little bit, the instrument manufacturers, even up to a couple of years ago, were really in a place where they were saying, you must be locked into our ecosystem, you must run through our software, and so you were a one company shop, or you didn't get some of the advantages of automation. There's a real inflection point there coming from sort of the instrumentation side where things are opening up. The data flows more easily, the APIs are more accessible, the automation opportunities around it are wildly different just in the last little bit. So, as you are sort of putting together what the next phase of your laboratory looks like, there are different things to think about. Sort of with that and the AI piece, there are automation opportunities that were not there
Mhm.
before
Absolutely.
in terms of how humans approach the process and can I provide any automation for them. And this is not the same thing as I'm just going to replace your whole laboratory staff. It is, I can augment what they can do. I can add to their capability and their capacity in ways that I could not before. So those opportunities really are changing. It leaves us a little bit of an inflection point. The laboratory of right now doesn't look very much like the one 2, 3 years from now. But I don't think anyone knows exactly how it's going to change. Just that this is an inflection point. I think you will see the change, even in a relatively slow to adapt and adopt industry like the scientific community. I need my experiment to stay the same way, and yet there is a whole bunch of power and tools that were not available. So lots of change coming.
More on that subject next year, and and with that, I think we're going to wrap up this conversation. But again, first of all, I want to thank Chris and James. Thank you for a really fun hour. I had 3 or 4 more questions I would like to ask, but we just don't have the time to do so. But I do want to encourage you if you do have need to relocate or move your operations, your scientific operations, please reach out to Chris. And Armstrong, they do a wonderful job in that area, and we're proud to be associated with them. And then of course, if you have bioinformatics or AI or other software needs within your laboratory or scientific instrumentation context, we're happy to help and happy to talk about that as well. With that, we are going to take a holiday break, but we got big plans for next year. More Yahara Live coming up, and I'll pass it on to Austin and tell you more about that.
Yeah, I'm going to start by echoing a little bit of what Garrett said. I want to quickly say thank you for everyone for joining us today, and a special thank you to Chris for being a part of this conversation with us. Looking forward, we are taking a break from Yahara Live in December to give everyone the holiday break that Garrett was just talking about, but we have a very strong lineup in 2026. So hope that you guys are back for that. If you're looking to connect before then, or you want to make sure you get emails about stuff like this, scan that QR code on your screen. It'll take you to a nice page You can sign up for more information or fill out a contact us form. And until then, until next time, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again later.